Next on Currents News, mourning the loss of one of New York's bravest. Tonight, the FDNY is paying tribute to a New York City firefighter. The Vatican investigating a new claim of sexual abuse against former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick.
We'll be able to say we have protected women's rights.
Governor Cuomo joined by Hillary Clinton for an announcement about so-called reproductive justice. Plus, it's getting cold outside. What this means for New York residents who say they routinely lose heat in their homes. The news starts right now. Shock and sadness across the Big Apple. The New York Fire Department is mourning the loss of one of their own who died in the line of duty. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. The firefighter was responding to a call on a Belt Parkway overpass when he slipped between the roadway and fell to his death. Currents News' Tim Harfman is live outside his firehouse in Canarsie with more. Tim.
Liz, you can see behind me members of the FDNY gathering to say goodbye to Stephen Pollard. He comes from a family of firefighters, including his father, a retired firefighter for nearly 3 decades, and his brother, an 11-year veteran. The procession to the funeral home as the city mourns the loss of one of its bravest.
They were obviously very upset and very distraught over this whole thing. The firefighters from the company were actually in shock.
FDNY chaplain Monsignor John Delendick describing the emotion of Stephen Pollard's family and fellow firefighters from Ladder Company 170 in Canarsie. The 30-year-old was with the department a year and a half. Pollard was responding to a call over the Mill Basin drawbridge along the Belt Parkway Sunday night, trying to save 2 car crash victims. But he fell through the gap between the lanes, plunging nearly 50 feet to his death. Fire Commissioner Daniel Nigro said, quote, "It's an incredibly sad night for the Pollard family, for the fire department family, for our city."
You've lost a family member, and it's very difficult, and you have to take time to pray.
Pollard and his family are parishioners at Good Shepherd in Marine Park. Stephen received his sacraments at the Brooklyn Church and was part of the religious education program. Pollard graduated from Brooklyn's St. Edmund Prep High School in 2006. He's described as very respectful, and he was a member of the hockey team. Outside the Canarsie Firehouse, a makeshift memorial with flowers. Canarsie residents are in mourning.
It breaks everybody's heart. I mean, who doesn't love a firefighter? They're really good guys, so I think everybody, the whole community hurts.
Appreciate everything. I'm very sorry to hear what happened. Our deepest condolences go out to his family and friends, I wish him all the best. God bless him.
Pollard is the 1,150th member of the department to die in the line of duty. A massive Christian burial is scheduled for Saturday morning at Good Shepherd Catholic Church. In Canarsie, Brooklyn, Tim Harfman, Currents News. Liz, back to you.
All right, Tim, thank you. Ahead of next month's high-stakes Vatican summit on sex abuse, the Holy See is now investigating a previously unreported case against ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. McCarrick, who was removed from public ministry earlier this summer, was stripped of his position in the College of Cardinals following allegations that he abused a former altar boy back in the 1970s. This new investigation marks the 3rd case against McCarrick. National correspondent for The Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, is here now with more details. Christopher, what are the facts that we know about this new case? What does this mean for McCarrick?
Well, Liz, the facts that we know about this news case are rather slim. What we know is that this was a family friend of McCarrick's who, alleging, at a young age, as a minor, that he was abused by the then priest who became one of the most consequential figures in the U.S. church. Today, he's in his mid-40s. He's chosen to remain anonymous at this point. But the Vatican is investigating this case, which up until this weekend was unknown. So again, this is now the 3rd case of a minor that is charging ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick with abuse.
Christopher, let's talk about the timing of this. Is the Vatican operating on a timeline for this case? I mean, could something come out of this before the summit next month? And if so, Would that affect the meeting?
Yeah, so these allegations first came to light back in June, this most recent one this past weekend, so we're talking about roughly a 6-month period. Now, all of these cases are being held before the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, which is the Vatican body that oversees all of the sexual abuse claims. They are meeting this week, and my understanding is that Pope Francis wants them to review these cases in an expedited manner in hopes of sort of wrapping this up before next month's high-stakes summit. The argument by many Vatican observers is that if the Pope is able to sort of wrap this up and take care of this, it shows that the Church is taking serious action on sex abuse.
Christopher, obviously there's a lot at play here. Now, besides McCarrick's potential fate as a priest, what else do we know about the various ongoing investigations involving the former cardinal? Is there any precedent that you know of that's been set?
Yeah, so if this review happens and they laicize him, which means they strip him of his clerical state, it will be nearly unprecedented. There are so few cases of former cardinals that have been laicized. So this would be a historic decision from the Vatican if this happens. So again, there aren't very many cases to point to. Now, laicization could have a possible appeal. So as within a civil case, it's fair that we have to say the cardinal has to go through due process here.
What's next, Christopher? You know that's the question I always leave you with. What do we expect?
Well, so the next is this high-stakes summit in February, in which the Pope has called the heads of every bishops' conference around the world to Rome to address sex abuse, and specifically the issue of bishops' accountability. Pope Francis has made it very clear, as recently as last week in his letter to U.S. bishops, that both the crime of sexual abuse and the cover-up must be addressed. And with McCarrick, it's the issue of the cover-up, not just the crime.
All right, Christopher, thank you very much. I know you'll be keeping a close eye on this. Also tonight in France, shouts of shame accompanied a French cardinal today as he entered a courtroom to stand trial. Cardinal Philippe Barbarin, the Archbishop of Lyon and one of the most prominent Catholic figures in France, is accused of failing to report abuse. Now, according to the allegations, he and 5 other members of his diocese failed to report a priest abusing Boy Scouts in the 1980s and 90s. Barbarin denies the allegations, but could face up to 3 years in prison if found guilty. Actor Kevin Spacey appearing in a Massachusetts court today on sexual assault charges. His attorneys entered a not guilty plea. Spacey faces charges of indecent assault and battery related to a 2016 incident involving an employee at a bar in Nantucket. The employee was 18 at the time and working as a busboy. The next hearing in the case is scheduled for early March. Governor Andrew Cuomo wants abortion rights included in the New York Constitution. With former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton by his side, Cuomo delivered a speech in Manhattan today vowing to withhold support for the state budget until the legislature approves the Reproductive Health Act. That's a long-stalled bill that would bolster abortion rights and birth control coverage, respectively.
We'll pass it next year. We'll put it on the ballot. We'll write it into the Constitution. And we'll be able to say we have protected women's rights in a way no one else has before.
The legislature is expected to approve the Reproductive Health Act, thereby installing Roe v. Wade rights in state law and removing abortion from the penal code on January 22nd. There is still no deal in sight to end the partial government shutdown. It is now day 17 of the showdown as President Trump considers declaring a national emergency at the border. Natasha Chen is in Washington with the latest.
Friday is the first time employees affected by the partial government shutdown won't be seeing their usual paycheck.
I live about a half hour from work, and it's going to come to a point where you say, do I put gas in my car or do I feed my family?
Brian Turner is a TSA worker, one of more than 400,000 essential federal employees called into work with no pay. Some unpaid TSA employees have called in sick, a trend known as the blue flu, though Turner said he has not done that.
You feel hopeless, and you feel helpless.
I can relate, and I'm sure that the people that are on the receiving end will make adjustment. They always do.
A federal employees union has already sued the government. Now the Airline Pilots Association has written to President Trump asking him to do what's necessary to end the shutdown. They say the disruptions are adversely affecting the safety, security, and efficiency of our national airspace system. The shutdown stalemate surrounds money for a border wall. President Trump has said he's considering bypassing Congress by declaring a national emergency at the border.
We have a lot of different ways. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just saying we are looking at it very strongly.
An emergency declaration could help fund a border wall using military construction dollars, but only on public lands. The majority of the land along the border is private property. In Washington, Natasha Chen, Currents News.
President Trump announced today that he will address the nation on the crisis at the border during prime time tomorrow night. He is set to visit the southern border on Thursday. The Supreme Court met this morning for its first day of oral arguments in the new year, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a key liberal justice of the court, was not there. Ginsburg, who's 85 years old, is still recovering from surgery last month that removed 2 cancerous nodules from her lung. The court's public information officer said Ginsburg will still be able to vote on cases. She will just have to review transcripts of the arguments. Can the third time be the charm? Former Vice President Joe Biden, who's joined the race twice before, says he will soon announce if he'll run for president. The New York Times is reporting an anonymous source close to Biden says the 76-year-old is leaning toward another chance. Biden reportedly has also told friends that he thinks he is the party's best chance to beat President Trump in 2020. At the Vatican, Pope Francis vowing justice today for all victims of clerical sex abuse. He called pedophilia one of the vilest crimes conceivable. The comments came during an annual address to members of the diplomatic corps. It also came with a warning for the world, and Melissa Butts has more from St. Peter's Square.
In his address to the diplomatic corps, Pope Francis promoted social justice in defense of the weakest, while strongly condemning violence, climate change, arms trade, and one more that he called one of the plagues of our time. Pope Francis once again condemned the sex abuse crisis, restating the Church's mission to combat it.
Gli abusi contro I minori costituiscono uno dei crimini più vili e nefasti possibili. La Santa Sede e la Chiesa tutta intera si stanno impegnando per combattere e prevenire tali delitti e il loro occultamento.
He additionally recalled wars in Yemen, the Ukraine, and especially in Syria, including the millions of refugees that have come from them.
Le ondate migratorie di questi anni hanno causato diffidenza e preoccupazione tra la popolazione di molti paesi, specialmente in Europa e nel Nord America.
Pope Francis encouraged everyone to open their doors, put down their weapons, and protect the most vulnerable in society, instead of restricting the number of immigrants allowed in a country. Yet he also celebrated positive aspects that happened this year, such as the restoration of relations between China and the Holy See, signs of peace in South Sudan and the Korean Peninsula, and hope for Venezuela. At the Vatican, Melissa Butts, Currents News. Back to you in New York, Liz.
Thank you, Melissa. The Orthodox Church of Ukraine has officially split with the Russian Church after 4 centuries. In a 4-hour ceremony held on Sunday, the spiritual leader of the Eastern Orthodox Christians recognized their independence by handing out a decree that officially severs ties with the Russian Orthodox Church. The Ukrainian church had been under Moscow's jurisdiction since 1686. There's a lot more news headed your way. Temperatures are dropping rapidly and many families are suffering through the blistering cold, but not just outside, in their own homes too. A young woman fleeing her religion is now under the care of the United Nations after using social media to beg for help. And the 3 kings visit Brooklyn, a special celebration complete with costumes and mariachi. Do you have a story idea? Something happening in your parish we should know about? We want to hear from you. Keep this email handy, newstips@desalesmedia.org. Email us. We'll be right back. As the cold weather hits the tri-state area and we bundle up with more layers, some NYCHA residents tell us to them the cold weather means keeping their jacket on while inside too. Currents News' Emily Drewby has that story from Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Every year I have to go through this.
Lily Randolph says she's lived in the same Van Dyke, New York City Housing Authority, or NYCHA building since the 1950s. Randolph says she now has heat in her NYCHA apartment, but didn't for weeks.
I was cold the whole time.
Father Edward Mason, the pastor of Our Lady of the Presentation and Our Lady of Mercy, is a longtime housing advocate. He says situations like Randolph's have become the norm.
It's been bad for a long time. And people become complacent. They become used to the situation. Yeah, it's winter, the boilers are going to break, we're going to be cold. And that's unacceptable.
Father Mason, who has over 400 NYCHA residents as parishioners, recalled a recent situation.
She was telling me, saying, oh, happy the heat's back on. You know, it was out for 3 weeks. And I'm saying, well, why didn't you let us know? And her attitude kind of was, well, doesn't that always happen? And because something always happens, people think it's okay, and we just have to learn to deal with it. No.
Father Mason also works with East Brooklyn congregations, an organization where one of the focuses is affordable housing, and he likens the situation to a dark cloud hanging over people's heads. A local NYCHA resident we spoke with agrees, explaining he showers the night before in case he wakes up with no hot water. Others say they've been lucky this year.
We got good heat.
Some weren't last year.
The beginning of last year, not so good. It was very cold.
But this year has been better so far.
The heat in Van Dyke has been okay, but some people say they haven't. But my building, so far, so good, thank God.
Father Mason explains the best way to fix NYCHA issues going forward is for residents to speak out and be their own voice. Those who run into affordable housing issues can contact East Brooklyn congregations at 718-642-1450. In Brownsville, Emily Drewby, Currents News.
13 children across the United States have died from influenza, and the death toll is expected to rise. The number and the warning come from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The agency says 19 states now have high levels of flu activity. They're warning anyone who hasn't gotten a flu shot to get one immediately. Last season, 185 deaths were reported from the infection. A young Saudi woman is under the care of the UN Refugee Agency tonight after barricading herself in a Thai airport. The 18-year-old claims she was fleeing her abusive family in the Middle East, who she feared would kill her for leaving her religion. Now, the woman posted various photos and videos of herself on social media, asking any country to help protect her. Pope Francis is urging European leaders to step in and rescue immigrants from the Mediterranean Sea. The Holy Father is appealing for 2 migrant ships to be accepted into a safe harbor from one of the several countries in close proximity to the sea, comparing the leaders to King Herod, who was afraid of losing power and did not think about the true people of God.
Un accorato appello ai leader europei perché dimostrino concreta solidarietà nei confronti di queste persone.
He invited all pilgrims to not be afraid and open their hearts to the light of Bethlehem. Back in the U.S., it's predominantly Latino families who are keeping a special Catholic celebration alive. It's a tradition that features colorful costumes, mariachi dancing, and 3 kings. Katie Engesser attended the parade route in Williamsburg on Sunday, and she has the story.
Traditional dances grace Graham Avenue for the 22nd annual 3 Kings Day Parade, a holiday that commemorates the 3 Magi's visit to the baby Jesus.
They respected Jesus Christ and they brought him gifts.
3 Kings Day is also known as the Feast of the Epiphany. It's a long-held tradition in Spanish-speaking communities. According to custom, the 3 Magi bring gifts to the children instead of Santa Claus. But parents say this holiday is about more than presents.
It's not always about the gifts, it's more about spirituality, getting together, family time.
The purpose of the parade is for the children to know our tradition, our custom.
Colorful costumes, music, dancing, live animals, and the 3 kings themselves are all part of this parade. Though the march has become a staple for Latinos in Brooklyn, the changing neighborhood has made the celebration more diverse.
Williamsburg, the past couple of years, has changed dramatically. One of the most gentrified areas in New York City.
Queen of the Rosary! Queen of the Rosary Catholic Academy are one of the groups participating in the parade. They march to teach their students about diversity and, as the last Catholic academy in Williamsburg, to keep them in touch with their community.
It's kind of like a lesson for the kids as well, to show them that, look, we're very diverse, we can go out there, we can be a part of the community. There's different races, there's different nationalities out there, and pretty much this is the era that we're growing up in right now.
And while this celebration marks the official end for the Christmas season, many of the students won't forget the true reason for the holidays.
God is our creator. He's the one that created us into this world, and he's the one that created this world for us. So we should actually be very thankful for that.
In Williamsburg, Katie Angasar, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News, Satan among those thanked during the Golden Globes in Hollywood. We'll have those details next. Plus, how a stop at a supermarket inspired a couple to help a homeless vet in a way he never imagined. The emotional story when we return. It was a star-studded night at the 76th Annual Golden Globes. Christian Bale took home the Globe for Best Actor in a Motion Picture Musical or Comedy, but it's what he said during his acceptance speech that raised a few eyebrows. After thanking his family and friends, Bale revealed his inspiration behind his portrayal of former Vice President Dick Cheney.
Thank you to that geezer over there, Adam. He said, I've got to find somebody who can be absolutely charisma-free and reviled by everybody, so he went, that's got to be Bale. Thank you to Satan for giving me inspiration on how to play this role.
Bale also said maybe he should play Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell next. And finally tonight, heartwarming story of a couple in Arizona who went the extra mile this Christmas season to change a homeless veteran's life. Their meeting, by fate, in a grocery store reunited the vet with his long-lost family. Nicole Valdez has more.
It's not every day you get to change someone's life.
I'm getting teary-eyed already.
This story starts at Whole Foods. Stephanie and Al Blackbird, grocery shopping just before Christmas, spotted a frail older man with nothing but a $5 bill. The couple bought him some food, started up a conversation, then parted ways.
As soon as we left, we said, oh my God, we should never have left him.
The next morning, the Blackbirds spent hours searching for the man who, in just minutes, touched their hearts.
We found him!
It didn't take long for this couple to find out Alan served in Vietnam, was even awarded a Purple Heart, and has a family who's been searching for him for almost 40 years.
I thought my brother was gone.
That voice, Julie Vandy Vander, Alan's younger sister. Julie hadn't heard from her brother since the 1980s.
I've kind of given up hope on ever seeing him because of just coming up to dead ends all the time.
He's right here.
Who was that?
It's the buzzard that you've been looking for.
This was their first phone call in decades.
He's the sweet, kind young man that I remember him to be.
A reunion that only happened thanks to a trip to the grocery store.
I feel like the gift is ours, really, that we got to meet this man, and I don't know where the journey's going to be, but I told him, like, you're stuck with us now.
Oh, the blessing of the kindness of strangers. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Fables. Thank you so much for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. I hope to see you again next time.